Thank you all so much. I'd just like to welcome everyone here tonight. I'm Sheila McAllister, Director of Planning. Thank you all for coming out tonight. I know it's wet and rainy. We're going to try to not keep you long tonight, but we really wanted you to be a part of hearing what we've gathered the past few months from you and the culmination of that and where we go from here. But thank you all again for coming out.
Thank you so much for having us. It's always a pleasure for us to come down and visit Newport News. We're always so impressed by the high level of participation and interest in the planning process. It's really a tribute to all of you. So we have a lot to cover tonight. We've been very busy, so I don't want to waste a minute. The first part of our presentation this evening is going to be providing an overview of where we are in the process, as well as the evolving vision and goals for the plan. And we'd also like to take a look at what we're kind of framing as our first big strategic moves that we see are tremendous opportunities. So as you can see, we are about 3/4 of the way through the planning process. This is our third community meeting, and we'll be holding another one in May, at which point we'll be presenting the complete plan to you for your feedback. And we also will be posting the draft plan online that will be available to you in a couple weeks, just to get some initial comments as well. And then we hope that the plan itself will be presented and shared with City Council and Planning Commission, and EDA and IDA over the summer, and hopefully be adopted at some point, preferably by the end of the summer. Okay. So with that, I'm going to turn it over just briefly to my colleague, Claudia, and she'll give you a little bit of a recap from the January workshop.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Claudia Ray. I work with Stacy. I'm actually urban planner and designer at WRT. And for those of you guys who were here in January, we have an open house, and I was actually in the station over here with some of the initial concepts that we have for Catalyst Size when we asked the general public about the relocation of the library, which is that figure on the top right. So for during those 2 days that we were here, we actually had a lot of you guys coming into here. So what you see by the numbers, how many participants that we have tons of input. And during that day, we introduced a preliminary themes for the plan. We did some initial concepts, had an idea wall, and like I said, we actually did initial kind of some sketches of how some of the areas can be redeveloped in the future, and they were super sketchy. We got comment back from you. We took all those comments back to the office and we do some drawing, and that's what you're gonna see in the back. So during that workshop, we actually hear from you guys about kind of 3 big themes. So one, it was about the creation of space. So we hear a lot from you guys saying we need to create a more of here, talking about a place that is accessible, a place that it has a character unique for us. I mean, we're seeing there's a lack of character and identity, and we would like to actually have a little more destinations to go for entertainment. Another thing that came across, you all love your natural system, the connection with the water. There's so many creeks around here. I mean, the natural system, and actually that came across super well, and you all embrace that. So you guys want to preserve your natural resources and history of the place. And everything else, it was mostly about transportation and connectivity. So one of them that we hear a lot, which is the first one on the left, a lot of people say it's really hard to get around. And that usually happens in corridors similar to Warwick and Denbigh and both of them, and it's the way that the patterns work. Sometimes when you have natures like your creeks and you wish the road will go through, you can't because you have a creek. So sometimes it's really hard to retrofit that, but we'll do our best. We also, hear about you guys saying that Lucas Creek is a road, an important connector. and there's a lot of potential for you to have a lot of bicycle and trail connections. So you can have either bicycles on your road for those ones that are more experienced, but we see also a lot of potentials to have some off-road trails along the creeks. And of course, for connectivity, there's bigger changes that come into the area. There's going to be a new off-ramp out of I-64 that is going to impact some of that traffic. So here are some numbers. When we came here in January, we were asking you to, on the first one, we have identified a series of themes. And one of them was natural system, economic revitalization, placemaking, health and safety, and connectivity. And we actually asked you, how would you invest your money? If you have money to spend in any of these themes, and you want to see changes right away. So this is, how we tally. They are kind of very evenly split. I think we gave each one of you like $1,000, something like that. But once again, natural system came first because it's something that you feel very passionate about it. And placemaking, for example, is the third one, but we're going to be talking a lot of placemaking today and what does that mean. And then the other question that we ask is, should the library move from the existing location or not? And we actually tally all those little pink dots that you put in there, and 55% of you say to move the library, 45% of you say the library stays. So it's a very 50-50 split. So options are still, refining the options, and this is something that we want to talk to you a little bit better. So Stacy's going to actually walk you through this next set of slides for a little while. She's going to actually walk you through the plan framework.
So I think, as Claudia said, one of the things that was very interesting at the January workshop was really to sort of hear some validation of the themes, the initial themes that we presented. So those are health and safety, placemaking, connectivity, economic revitalization, and natural systems. And I think, as you can see in the way that some of the voting came, and a lot of the comments that we received, it seemed to be very much in keeping with those themes. And so we've continued to use those as we've started to develop the preliminary goals and vision and strategies, as we'll be sharing you on the next series of slides. So for health and safety, I just to introduce you to the format of the next series here. First, there are a set of 3 slides for each theme. And so the first is this, which is showing you some of the issues and the opportunities that we considered. And then as you move on to the next page, we'll show you the vision, and then we go into some of the goals. And so each of them are set up the same way. So in this case, for health and safety, there were a number of issues that were brought to our attention, and so some among them certainly was safety. Safety, we heard again and again from business owners, from residents, something that definitely needs to be addressed in some way. In addition, as we know, the police, fire, and emergency services are currently on a fairly constrained site. And could use or benefit from I think a more visible presence in the community, and also more direct access in terms of response times. And then resident health. There's definitely a need for access locally for more medical services. And there was also a lot of interest in greater access to recreation. So these were some of the things that we were thinking about, as well as the opportunities. So the vision that we're proposing is that Denbigh-Warwick is a safe, healthy, and inviting community for all residents, including young professionals, families, empty nesters, and retirees. Entrepreneurs and small business owners are attracted to the area's diversity and flourishing local business climate. And so how do we get there? If that's our vision, what are the goals that we could establish to help us get there? And so these are some of the preliminary goals that we've outlined for you. And as you can imagine, we've got 5 themes. I promise that I won't lull you too much to sleep. These themes and the goals, the visions, the strategies are all posted around the room so that you can read them in greater detail. But just to give you some of the highlights, as you can see, we've got 4 goals that we felt should be focused on. The first has to do with improving the overall appearance and the sense of safety in the area. The second has to do with establishing a more modern police, fire, and emergency services facility in a more accessible and visible location. The third has to do with fostering a more holistic approach to resident health, and that's really creating a positive atmosphere that promotes physical activity as well as access to services, and that creates a healthy living environment for people. And then we also wanted to consider the opportunity to build on the agricultural history of the area. I mean, that's something that's so strong and so special, and that we know, again, kind of getting back to what Claudia talked about with the natural systems, you know, are there ways that we can integrate that, whether they're small brush strokes or large, perhaps with a farm stand or a pop-up farmer's market, or just are there other ways that we can integrate that, again, and creating this kind of atmosphere that's positive and promoting good health and wellness. On the right, we're illustrating a couple strategies in terms of how you can achieve this, and I just wanted to point out one of the images on the top left, and you might be scratching your head wondering, what does that have to do with this? But you know, there are a lot of opportunities as we think about some of these major redevelopment sites to think about the way that the built environment affects safety as well. So right now you have some vacant properties, or you have some expansive parking lots, and the problem is that you create dark corners where, you know, things can happen if you don't get the sense that somebody's home and is watching, you know. So in design like this, and I can honestly say this is a project that we worked on out in California, that this was very similar to the condition along Warwick Boulevard. So it's very much a very broad avenue, and the design, as you can see, brought in all kinds of streetscaping, safe bike lanes, brought some of the buildings up to the street edge with windows, with eyes on the street, and stimulating activity and pedestrian. You know, you want feet out there, and you want eyes on the street, and you want to give people an opportunity to socialize, and then by having that more physical presence, it can have a significant reduction in crime. And then some of the other things, as you can imagine, more visible police presence, and also an emphasis on safe crosswalks. So placemaking, this is a term I think as planners we use often, and you hear more and more around the country, and I think in situations where development has taken place in the way that it has in the area here, you realize that in some cases what's missing are these opportunities, these crossroads that bring people together, you know. Excuses during your everyday to run an errand and bump into a friend, you know, and we spend an awful lot of time increasingly in our cars, and we don't have that opportunity to catch up and connect. And so those are the sorts of things that we really want to think about as we're thinking about places. What are those places today that bring people together? And so character, you know, there are a lot of opportunities here that we feel. There's wonderful history, there's a great interest in art and culture, and bringing out the wonderful history and celebrating it. So those are the sorts of things that we see as potential. Also looking at opportunities to create more central gathering places and activity centers. There's sort of a lack of identity. You suddenly arrive and you're in the Denbigh-Warwick area, but how do you know that? You know, and so are there ways that we can make that clearer and make it feel more like a point of arrival? Accessibility, same sort of thing, because there are some limited pedestrian and bus connections. There aren't as many people out socializing, bumping into one another. Again, creating a there that's attracting people. And community facilities such as this are such an amazing asset. My God, people around the country would die to have a building like this in their communities. So how are there ways that we can improve access to that? And we're talking about on foot, by bike, even public transit, so that people can use it more easily and integrate it into their everyday. So the placemaking vision really tries to stress what's so special about Denbigh. So distinct from other parts of Newport News, Denbigh-Warwick is vibrant, green, and diverse, with dynamic civic spaces like the Grissom Library, Denbigh-Warwick Community Center, parks, and public plazas. There's always something to do, from festivals to farm markets, outdoor concerts and movies, which create a warm sense of community. A hip foodie culture is also evolving around the entrepreneurial tech hub that is taking shape along Oakland Industrial Park and Fort Eustis. So, with that vision in mind, how do we get there? What are some of the goals that can get us there? So for this, we've established 3 that you can see up here. And perhaps one of the biggest goals I think that we are proposing is to create like a series of village centers. When we look at Warwick Boulevard, you tend to have an awful lot of sprawling development. Is there a way, are there a couple points along the way that we could actually bring some of those uses together, create more of a cluster, and create a destination so that ideally people have the ability to access that within a mile? So we figure, a mile is a bit of a stretch walking for some people, but we'll get there. It's a good goal to have. And then in addition, we're hoping to define these more distinct character areas that I referred to before, and also identifying the major entrances, and gateways, and so that, they're more prominent. And as you can see, I think that the pictures really illustrate different ways that by bringing together some of these diverse uses, you really have the chance to be very thoughtful about your next moves and about, rather than just placing things in an isolated manner so that people have to get in their cars to go do their next errand or their next errand, you can actually have spaces where you can come together, you can catch up, socialize, pick up your dry cleaning, check out a book, and maybe sit and catch up with a friend at the same time. And some of the other things that we're talking about here, this is actually a night shot of that same commercial strip that I referred to before, where again, they really made a conscious effort to bring businesses out further to the street edge to create more of an interesting edge so that when you're driving by it, there's some visual appeal, activity going on. Also still landscaping, lighting, and again, more foot traffic. And on the bottom right, we're just kind of trying to get in your mind some thoughts about what could gateways look like? What does that mean? There are a lot of different ways to do that. There are a lot of different ways to express your history and your culture. Are there ways that we could create unique gateways that also display your interest in history and culture? Connectivity, I think that we've kind of already talked a lot about what some of the issues are here. So in our minds, we're thinking about connectivity from both the regional scale as well as more of the inter-neighborhood as well as the intra-neighborhood connections. And again, looking at different ways to connect to your community assets. So the vision that we've outlined for connectivity is proposing that residents, businesses, and employees find Denbigh-Warwick an appealing area to locate, as it's well connected to the city and the larger region, which is already really the case. Multiple bus routes, a network of bike lanes, and enhanced walkability provide transportation alternatives. An interconnected system of sidewalks and crosswalks allow residents of all ages to safely access and take advantage of the community's schools, parks, waterfront, shopping, services, and civic amenities. So how do we get there? So definitely we want to look at some way to just kind of tick away at alleviating some of the traffic congestion, which we recognize is not always a bad thing. It's great to have people zipping by your retail corridor and hopefully stopping in. But creating choices, creating transit alternatives so that some people, if you're running out to get milk, maybe you don't have to hop in the car. Maybe there are other ways to get around, to just take off a few cars from the road from time to time. Also looking at enhancing the safety and the character of the Denbigh-Warwick area and improving pedestrian and bike connections. And that's looking at, again, between the major areas at this point is what we're trying to do, is to create a network so that at least you can easily get from, say, neighborhoods to schools, from neighborhoods to the community center. You know, start with those before we create a more rigorous network. And then, this might be a little pie in the sky, but we really would love to strive to have all neighborhoods within a 10-minute walk of a nice size park or green space. And I think with that, again, the benefits, as you all know, are numerous, and in terms of access to green spaces for all different ages. So that's definitely something that we're thinking about and see as an opportunity. And I guess one thing that I wanted to just point out on this slide, in particular on the lower left-hand side, is, you know, a lot of times in communities when you start trying to think about, oh, how do we safely integrate a bike network when, oh my gosh, our streets are really busy, and it's true, but you know, we live in Philadelphia, and Market Street is a really busy street, and we have a bike lane, and it is doable, and it's more. You just have to start, and you just have to dip your foot into the pot and get going. And so this is a demonstration project down here on the lower left where, you know, just for a couple hours on a Saturday, you could block off, you know, a route. It could just be, you know, Lucas Creek, and just show people this is what it could be like. You know, you can easily, this is tactical urbanism at its best. You just put out some planters, some trees, create a just safe bike lane, and let people go, and let people just enjoy it, whether they're walking, whether they're biking. You can have ice cream, and just see what it's like, and just let them take a sip and see what it's like. Economic revitalization, that is our fourth theme, and I think we see all kinds of opportunities here, and some issues. We've got tremendous anchors in the community, business anchors, such as, you know, Port Eustis and Oakland Industrial Park, as well as other opportunities to attract businesses. But how do we get there? So that's definitely one of the questions. Services and entertainment, again, we heard again and again, strong desire for more local opportunities for entertainment that are multicultural, arts and music venues and events. Also a great interest in different food, you know, the foodie culture and artisanal, both distilleries and breweries and that whole craft scene too. And housing, again, I think we recognize there's, you know, the housing landscape is changing dramatically, and people are buying houses or renting and doing things in many different ways, with accommodating many different family types. And so integrating some different types of housing, I think, would also help people also remain in the community. So Denbigh-Warwick has a varied and supportive employment base that benefits from proximity and relationships with Port Eustis and Oakland Industrial Park, as well as the larger Hampton Roads region. In addition to quality employment, retail, restaurants, and community services that cater to the area's diverse residents, employees, and visitors, Denbigh-Warwick's diversified housing makes it livable at every stage of life. And again, so we have outlined about 4 different goals right now, and I really hope that, please, let us know. Maybe we're off with these goals. Please feel free to propose goals to us or strategies. There are tons of Post-its, and we really welcome your comments. So the 4 preliminary goals that we're recommending have to do with supporting local small businesses. When we looked at the local environment and where people are working, it's evident that there are a number of small businesses scattered throughout the whole Denbigh-Warwick area. So how do we lift that up? How do we continue to promote that and support those businesses? Is this through you know, a small business incubator, or perhaps flex space, or even just enhancing and working more closely even with the Denbigh-Warwick Business Association to just, you know, and allow them to continue doing what they're doing. Creating opportunities for new jobs and education and training that allow also for some community interaction. So a place like Selden Market that you may have seen is kind of one example that I know many people have recommended to us. There's a great vibe that it creates, and there's also a great service that it provides to entrepreneurs. And we also recognize that the area outside of or up and around Oakland Industrial Park could really benefit from more services to support that, that are in keeping with the high profile that it has and the amazing resource that it is to the region. And I think we've talked a little bit about housing. So again, one of the goals is to ensure a little bit more of or introduce a little bit more variety. And lastly, the last theme that we have proposed has to do with natural systems, and I think we've alluded to how important that is. Obviously all communities are dependent upon their natural systems and their preservation, so that's very important to us, and looking at that in any kind of development, redevelopment, planning that we might recommend. We also want to look at ways to encourage the participation of all residents in enjoying those natural systems, and also being a steward, because it really is going to rely on everybody. And of course, we want to look at ways to increase access. So our vision is that Denbigh-Warwick's agricultural roots are still evident today through its mature trees, natural corridors, parks, and other green spaces that are integrated into its public places. The area greatly respects its location along the water, preserving its edges with natural buffers. Park and recreational spaces protect the area's natural resources while encouraging physical activity and wellness. And resilient design and stormwater management features create additional green elements while reducing the environmental impact of the built environment. And so those goals, and again, we're very aware of all of the other planning efforts that have gone on, so a lot of these tie into the comprehensive plan goals as well as the roadmap to sustainability. So definitely the first goal we talked about is preserving the green corridors and the natural buffers. Again, this is a little bit of an overlap with one of our prior goals, because there is a lot of overlap. Striving to provide a park or green space within a 10-minute walk of all neighborhoods, and also encouraging new development and significant redevelopment to incorporate resilient design and green building practices, as well as the dedication of public open space. So you can see some of those opportunities illustrated. The upper left is again kind of integrating some of those green infrastructure and stormwater management features that also, double to create a really pleasant and inviting environment. So, since I still see a few eyes open, I'm going to put you out of your misery and turn you over to my colleague, Claudia. We see a couple exciting opportunities for sort of the first big moves. So now that we've outlined the vision and the goals and how we might get there, these are some of we'll kind of go into what we see as the first kind of big opportunities.
Alrighty, so we've been seeing a lot of pictures and words, so we're gonna actually try to mix it up from now on and see actually more pictures and less words. So, how do we translate all this vision? It needs to actually be translated physical in the place. And when we're doing our analysis, this is our entire study area. Actually, the length of the corridor is 7 miles. So believe it or not, the challenge on a corridor, it is very long and skinny. So how do we can actually, if we talk about placemaking and character, how we can actually start breaking that 7 mile in areas or sectors. So we think initially we can actually take the entire area and breaking that in 3 sectors. So the northern one, basically, and these are not set out boundaries, but just for us to get an idea. So Atkinson to Entertainment Drive, then the core one we're saying is from Atkinson to Denbigh Boulevard, no, to Glen Boulevard. and then blend to Oyster Point. And the reason that we make this kind of break into three kind of bigger sectors is because we see there's a different character from the residential to the corridor. Even the type of businesses that you have in the south are a little bit different from what we call the core and what we call to the north. So talking a little bit about connectivity and how we can enhance the regional access and also actually how we can improve local access to community destinations right now. We think initially if we're talking about regional connections, I think it's very important to improve and strengthen your east-west connection. So a lot of stuff is going on Jefferson, and you actually have a few streets that go across the highway. So we think that Fort Eustis Boulevard is one street that needs to be improved. There's going to be a new connection on Atkinson Way, and it's going to become Atkinson Boulevard over there. Then Denbigh Boulevard has actually great connections to be one of your key east-west connectors because it connects all the way to Jefferson to Denbigh Park. And it goes across a lot of type of uses, including, there's a big potential in the center with Warwick Boulevard to actually try to create a core in that center. Bland Boulevard, a little bit similar, doesn't go through all the way like Denbigh, but then, it breaks down a little bit and there's possibilities to link to trails over there. And then in the south on Oyster Point Road. We also think there's actually a potential to improve some of your neighborhood streets. So for example, Lucas Creek Road. And one of the things that we hear about is how do we can bring bicycle connections into this. So we think there's a good potential to have, a loop of bike lanes, so what you see in Dash are probably recreational bike facilities along the creeks. And what you see in a solid line on Warwick Boulevard in some of the neighborhood streets is to formalize and actually have a protected bike lane in some of these areas. And the idea is to be able to connect, your schools, your parks, and connect back to the corridor. So you don't have to use your car all the time, for example, on a weekend if you want to go to any of these new destinations. So gateways is another thing. We're talking about character and identity and a sense of arrival. So how we can introduce certain gateways in some of these intersections. So if you're coming from the south, Oyster Point will be your first one. If you're coming from the north, that Fort Austin Boulevard, we wanted those. So how do we can, once you're driving, seeing these elements, they can tell that you have a ride or you're in a place. Natural system, this is also kind of a little bit overlapping with connectivity, but how we can improve the access or expand the access to some of the great natural systems that you have. And one of the big moves is how do we can improve the access to the river. So one potential point is on Denbigh Park. How do we can improve Denbigh Park to be more attractive and not just it's basically a boat ramp right now, but actually how can it become a place. And with the integration of the system with bike lanes and trails, also have access to the water, the natural systems. And once again, this is linking. I think when you think about placemaking, we also have to think about natural system as those places and enhance those. So the next one, I think Stacy a little bit mentioned about the idea of the gateways, which I said before, but also this idea of village centers and try to create along the corridor these places that are going to be new places of destination for you guys to go. So initially we have identified 5. It doesn't mean that we're limited to those 5. But starting on the center on number 3, which is the Kmart site, and this is something that we talked to you about in our last meeting. We think there's a lot of potential in the intersection of the Denbigh and Warwick Boulevard to that whole core to become your center, your downtown. And then if we move a little bit to the south, where we have the Sherwood side, number 4, and then a little bit to the north, which is actually the community center. So how do these 3 what we call catalyst sites of places start becoming your new destination, and you're gonna start building a little more of a mass, and that entire area become your downtown, for example, with time. Once again, with time. And we can start doing the same thing on the northern side and the southern side. So we have identified initially some of the sites for you. We actually did some drawings that are on the board to show like opportunity for redevelopment. For now, what we're doing is showing opportunities. It doesn't mean that everything that we draw, this is how it's gonna happen. But what we wanna say, what are the frameworks, based on what you told us about how we can create a place, how can we bring the buildings closer to the road, have an open space, be a destination, include a little bit more of housing, have different type of retail, how do we put together that physical in one place. So we like I say, we took some of those sites, to our office, and starting to the one on the north, this is actually the Mary Oaks Shopping Center. So I believe there's a church right there right now. So one of the things that, Stacy showed you some of the pictures right now, because the way that we used to build back in the 60s, there's very large buildings, and actually there's a lot of parking because we like to drive everywhere. And usually there's a ratio of like X amount of square footage of retail, you have to have X amount of parking. So that is changing right now with the current, either demographics or actually change of retail. Retail right now doesn't need that much space. That's why we don't see there's no more Circuit City, and a lot of those big boxes actually have closed with the years, and retail is changing. So therefore the footprint of retail also is changing. Therefore the amount of parking also is changing. So if we think about if this site needs to be redeveloped for the next gen of retail or office or housing, how do we look? So once again, this is a 7-mile corridor, and then we believe that you cannot fill the entire corridor only with retail because there's a lot of e-commerce. It's just not realistic. And we also hear that you guys need a little more of housing options and choices. So this is actually showing how we can align some of the retail, facing the street. We're gonna bring the buildings closer to the street. We're gonna put the parking behind the building so it's buffer. So if we're driving, we'll only seeing cars. And in this case, actually, it's gonna give us an opportunity. There's a neighborhood in the back of this mall, and there's some actually existing roads. So how we can stitch back and bring some of that neighborhood in. And on this side, actually give us the opportunity to do some housing, single family housing and townhomes. So in the side that it was only a commercial side with a lot of parking, now we're gonna be able to, with a smaller footprint for commercial, we can actually incorporate housing into this. So it's a little more mix of the uses. And of course, do some improvements on each one of the intersection, and if we're introducing the concept of the gateways, how some of these corners can actually become having a little more of the vertical elements to be gateways. Similar case to a site on the south. This was actually where we have the E-Mart Plaza. And once again, we are drawing stuff in this. We're not saying that E-Mart is gonna have to go away. Is just saying that. The reason that we actually showed these two developments is to be able to redevelop any of this, you need to have certain depth to accommodate a lot of uses. That some of your parcels are really skinny, very narrow, and those are probably gonna stay like that for a really long time. The ones that you actually have more depth, you can do a lot of things on those. And the ones are on probably one or two person. So this one, similar case, the building push all the way to the back. We have a seat of parking on the front. So if we're envisioning how to retrofit this as an infill redevelopment site, similar to the one in the north, we can once again, bring the buildings closer to the road, hide it, then we have parking on the back, and then introduce some townhomes. And also in this one, We think that we can have, for example, an element of open space in the center. I mean, we want to make sure that everything that you guys redevelop, since it's very hard for a municipality to create new parks and maintain the parks, every time that you do a redevelopment, you can ask the developer to provide an open space, a usable open space where the development is in charge of the maintenance. So anytime that we have an opportunity to introduce an open space for the community is great. So every sketch that we're showing, you'll see that. Alrighty, so this is now kind of the core area. Zoom in a little bit, and this was me having a little bit of fun. So we can talk about this. So to get you guys a little bit around north, so that's Denbigh Boulevard, and that's the thing. So the existing Kmart is located, Stacy, going over where the existing Kmart is? There you go. Thank you, it's only there. So we basically took where the Kmart side is, where the SunTrust building is, even to the other plaza that is to the east, and try to see and envision if we actually own and have the possibility to redevelop that entire side as our new downtown, our new core, what can we put there? So basically, one of the things that we hear a lot is like, how do we can connect to the conservation area? So one of our big moves is if we can create a road along the conservation area with a trail, that can eventually, that trail connect to the existing Grissom Library and the neighborhood. That's, one of the big moves that we want to do. The other move that we want to do is how do we can restitch and make this space with a decent grid and blocks. It needs to have some kind of blocks like regular cities that you see. New York City their blocks are 200 by 400 to kind of increase that connectivity. So if people is walking, there's a lot of intersection and make a walkable space. And also how we can create a town green in the center. For if you have a 4th of July event, that will become your town green. And another challenge that we have in corridors like this one over here is sometimes the new development that you do is what I call you have to create. It's very hard to make the boulevard walkable. So it is very easy. It's actually better if the system that we create, it has what I call is off-Broadway. So we want to try to create a main street on Oriana and the one on the north that all your new development is going to be facing that. So you can actually park your car in one of the garage, in one of the parking lots, and walk along that new main street that we're going to create within the development. So that's the first one. On the south, if you start moving in the south, start thinking about the other plaza, how they can redevelop. Once again, like the one in the north, we can start pushing some of those buildings closer to the road. So once you're driving over there, you're going to see that building mass. And then on the south side where you have Sherwood, it will be a little bit similar. We want to try to push all our buildings closer to the road, try to create that town green in there, access to the conservation area on the back, and combine all those elements. So now if we have this one in the south, a little bit in the north, and possibly the community center on the north, so that is slowly is going to start becoming your core over the years.
So as we start thinking about placemaking and the opportunities that you have, we wanted to come back. I know that the Grissom Library is near and dear to everybody's hearts. It's a very special neighborhood anchor, and so we've done a lot of thinking about it, and I know at our last workshop we were looking at 4 different potential sites. And I think that what really struck us is we wanted to just reiterate to everybody the potential and this amazing opportunity that you have before you, because obviously we're working on an area plan, and so we're looking at all of these strategies in terms of how they appeal and how they apply to corridor wide. But the opportunity that you have before you in considering the library and considering what it can be is really tremendous. And I think we just wanted to take the moment to sort of hit the pause button and just and give you a little bit more food to think about as we weigh those locations and the opportunity. And so we wanted to talk a little bit about, because I feel like we hadn't done this up until now, to talk a little bit about what 21st century libraries are really looking like. And so libraries have really changed dramatically in the last 20 years, and certainly in the last 42 years since Grissom was built on its current site. And certainly the neighborhood around it has also changed dramatically. And they're more than just places to come to pick up a book or pick out a book. But they really serve a greater purpose, and I think that, you know, I know we're speaking to the choir here, but because of the way also digital technology has entered all of our lives, it's also really serving an important thread and a point of access for people to job skills, to job training, to all kinds of other opportunities, as well as arts and culture and and entertainment, and also socialization. You know, I think we all can spend a lot of time in our cars and staring at our phones, but we're very social beings, and it really is very important for all of us to connect with each other. So increasingly, libraries are playing a much bigger role in really anchoring community redevelopment. They're really creating this sense of community and a sense of belonging. And they have this incredible power, I think, to really uplift communities and bring people together. So for some of these reasons, I think it's important to recognize that given this opportunity, you have the potential to create a resource, to create an identity, to create a central gathering point, to create a really highly visible anchor that can give Denbigh-Warwick, put it on the map, create a destination. I think one of the things we have concerns about is that Newport News is lagging behind some of the other areas, and I don't say that lightly, but in terms of what they're doing with their libraries. And so what we're showing here, and again, I would encourage you, we have a little more information about these libraries. I'm sure you're much more familiar with them than I am, but on the back, the Sono Memorial Library on the left in Chesapeake, so the lower two, which is very striking just because it really serves as a gateway building, and so it's very highly visible to the community. There's also a housing component nearby, community rooms, and it's really anchoring a nucleus of activity in the way that we've kind of been talking to you. And then on the right is the Slover Library, and obviously this is a tremendous architectural feat, and so this is kind of 3 buildings in one, a historic renovation and adaptive reuse, as well as a new addition and this beautiful, amazing last addition. And we, you know, few communities have the opportunity to do something this special, but you have an opportunity to do something that provides many of the same uses, you know, that can really be a showpiece for the community, that can really be a destination, you know, and that can really, I think, catapult you in terms of creating a place in the community. And so we just kind of wanted to bring these back and also let you know what we're thinking about when we're putting together the plan. So these are some of the interesting spaces, I think, that are happening in libraries around the country, and you're seeing these in different, you know, in different scales. And so what you're seeing up here on the top left is messy spaces. Lots of libraries are creating these opportunities to expose people to some of these newfangled technologies, and also low tech or no tech technologies, but opportunities to be very creative at all different ages. This is not limited to just children and Legos. This is technology, this is involving 3D printing, this is involving art and sculpture and all kinds of opportunities. And connecting people to technologies that they may not otherwise have the opportunity to interface with. Also, cafes and coffee bars, and I'm sure that there are some people who may feel this is not maybe an appropriate use, but at the same time, you know what? It really attracts people. It gives people a place and a place to be and to stay and a reason to stay. Multi-use spaces for community meetings, that's really becoming an important opportunity and factor. And also other spaces, of course, quiet spaces, very, very important. Seeing a lot of libraries with fireplaces and gathering spaces. And I just wanted to share that in the recent library study, I don't know if all of you participated in the survey that Grissom did, but some of the features that came out in that survey, the number one feature that was desired was a cafe or coffee bar with seating. And then the other top choices were, in fact, some sort of theater or auditorium for presentations or concerts or performances or lectures, gallery space for exhibits, community art, as well as an art studio for painting and sculpture. And it's not listed here, but another thing that was also pointed out was a connection to nature, an outdoor area that might have outdoor seating as well as gathering space, and so, or perhaps even a community garden. And this is also something that we're seeing around the country more and more. So we just, we really do take your input and your feedback very seriously, and I just want to assure you that the thoughts and analysis was not taken lightly. And so these were some of the features and the characteristics, bless you, that we were considering in our analysis as we looked at the 4 sites that we had originally presented to you. So some of the factors that as we've talked about, that are trying to meet the goals of what we're trying to achieve with the plan are a highly visible location, an easily accessible location, not just by foot or car, but also public transit. The ability to be walkable and bikeable from nearby neighborhoods. The potential to anchor a larger redevelopment, because that really is a tremendous opportunity that we didn't want to lose sight of. We also thought that given Grissom's current location, that it was important to consider that possibly Warwick Boulevard may be seen as a barrier that may be difficult to get some people to cross. So we also thought that that should be a factor. Is there a way that we can, if we were to relocate the library, can it remain on the same side of Warwick? And then as we talked about proximity to green space, I think we have those opportunities on all the sites, and also the potential to generate economic revitalization. So with that in mind, we just wanted to share the details of the individual sites that we looked at. These are more refined concepts. I think that Claudia pretty much led you through this one already. And this is talking about, this is on the former Kmart site. And I think we talked about establishing this sort of central town green, the opportunity to create a main street and a destination, and also enhance connections up to the Stony Run Greenway. So we definitely see that as a tremendous opportunity and a feature. And so when we talk about creating sort of a trail along that edge, and also looking for ways to connect that across Warwick if possible, and also down on the other side. So here again, just to kind of look at this in a couple different angles. One of the things that we talk about that a town green can do is really provide different spaces that can be used in a multitude of ways, and also kind of meet some of the goals we talked about, like a pop-up farmer's market if we wanted, or perhaps a concert or an outdoor movie in the summertime, or again, looking for opportunities to host those events to bring people together. On the Sherwood site, this is a concept that we're currently proposing. And as you can see, we've pushed the buildings up to form the edge along Warwick Boulevard, create more interest in tucking the parking behind the buildings. We have this town green that's overlooking the conservation area in the back and making a connection to the creek, and we're thinking about looking into the opportunity again in the long term at establishing a trail along the creek. And this is a potential location for the Grissom Libraries we're showing you here in blue. Again, being able to take advantage of that opportunity and make that connection to the green with views of the green, and also perhaps over the conservation area, also future residential, office space, and other municipal services as well. So this is some examples of, again, how that could look, what the town green might look like there. And this is a very sizable site, so there is a lot that can go on that site. And we also talked about possibly locating some sort of, is there an opportunity to locate like a business incubator, or again, getting back to how do we support local businesses and create opportunities for networking and resources. And here we are looking at the existing site of the Grissom Library and other municipal services. I think upon further exploration, what we learned is, the city has invested in a number of funds to stabilize the building, and this is going to be an ongoing issue that's going to require, regular maintenance, as all buildings do. But at the same time, it really needs substantial upgrades to the mechanical and electrical systems. It really needs new finishes. It really needs some other changes to make it what you want it to be. And unfortunately, I think it's really too small at this point to really realize that kind of 21st century vision that we had in mind. So, but with that in mind, we have been trying to think of, well, what are the other opportunities if in fact Grissom were to move? Now what happens to that very valuable and important site to everybody with those very special historic resources? We, at this time, do not have any answers for that. We only have ideas, and we would share them and encourage you to share your ideas with us. Could there be an environmental education center which could tie into a trailhead that could celebrate the area and serve as a launching off point? How can we preserve the historic courthouse, of course, and maybe integrate that into more of a arts and cultural asset or center? And does it make sense to, explore higher end single-family residential homes? And so I think at this point, it's really opportunities are simply out there for consideration. And then lastly, we again wanted to share with you that we very much did our due diligence and also considered the opportunities here on the Denbigh Community Center. And I think there were a lot of things that we heard repeatedly, and that's great interest in a community pool, which has been on the table for a little while. And then in addition, there was also a lot of talk about expanded recreational opportunities and programming, and maybe even the potential of supporting regional competitions, athletic competitions. And so given the tremendous facilities that are already here, is there a way to expand on that and build on that? And that seemed to present more of an opportunity for consideration, frankly. So that's it. That's a lot of information that we've shared with you, and we hoped to be very, very thorough and really take all of your comments to heart. But we also, at the same time, want to assure you that this is very preliminary. These are the draft goals, draft vision, draft strategies. There are more specific strategies outlined on the boards over here. So we would really like to take the rest of this time, or your time this evening, to read through again what we presented to you tonight. To feel free to ask any questions that you may have. We're all here. We're happy to entertain them. And also to share any comments. Let us know if we're even close to the mark, or we're way off the mark, or what we need to continue to consider.